Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Quist, and today we're going to do a little bit of a different type of episode. We're going to cut into a presentation that I did on 5 tips for a healthy heart. Hope you enjoy it. First of all, I'm going to be talking about 5 strategies that I personally do that make my heart healthier. I have to start with a little disclaimer. So I am not a cardiologist. I am not a medical doctor. I am a doctor of physical therapy. So I'm not giving you guys medical advice with these different things. I'm just telling you what I personally am doing with these 5 steps that I take on almost a daily basis. I have a pretty bad family history of heart disease. My father had his first coronary surgery bypass at age 52 and then passed away of heart disease at 68. My grandfather died of heart disease, and my brother has all kinds of bad indicators for heart disease currently. So about 5 years ago, I was kind of thinking, well, gosh, I have young children. Maybe I should get my heart checked out just to make sure I don't have the Quist curse of heart disease. And I went to my doctor and said, hey, how do I check this out? And he said, well, let's do a heart scan, and then let's also do an exercise stress test. So did the stress test, passed with flying colors, and then a couple days later, my doctor called and said, well, got your heart scan results, and you are in the worst 5% category for your age. So meaning 95% of people at age 45 were doing quite a bit better than me. And those of you who are unfamiliar with a heart scan, it's basically a test where they measure the amount of calcium in your coronary arteries. And from there, they can kind of get an idea of how much plaque you have in those arteries. And unfortunately, that test, unfortunately for me, is a very predictive test of whether you're going to have a heart event in the future, meaning a heart attack or some kind of bad thing happening to you that way. So needless to say, I freaked out, and I started to read everything I could get my hands on in relation to heart disease, and trying to figure out, can you slow the progression? Can you reverse the progression of heart disease? Is there anything you can do lifestyle related that can help? And as I started to read all this stuff, I started to find, gosh, you know what? Heart disease is really interesting. You know, it's a fascinating process that happens in the arteries, and the fact that there's still a lot of conversation about what the causes are, and there's still arguments and discussion. It's really a fascinating topic. So I just became personally interested in it, and I've learned so much over the course of the last 5 years in looking at it. So I'm going to give you my 5 best tips for things that I personally do. All of these tips come from different books that I've read, and I'll reference the books, so in case you want to have some good reading material, you can do that as well. So tip number 1 is, if you have heart disease, you should probably never be dehydrated. Okay, and this comes from, you stole my material. This comes from the Blue Zones with Dan Buettner. So I'm not going to go into detail on this because you did a great job, Josh, of explaining this. But those areas of the world where these people are living these much longer lifespans, and there's that one area here in Loma Linda, California, where the Seventh-day Adventists are living longer. And there's that massive study that Josh referenced about, they're looking into why are these people doing so well. And one of the things that they teased out of that study, and even the person who did the study was saying that she never allows herself to get dehydrated, because in the study they found that people that drank 5 glasses of water or more and stayed well hydrated versus individuals that had 2 glasses or less, the well-hydrated individuals had a 50% less chance of having some type of heart event over the course of the study. So that's kind of like shocking, a shocking statistic. If there was a drug that reduced your chance of having a heart attack by 50%, it would be the biggest drug in the history of mankind. So is it just as simple as intaking a little bit more water? And in the study, it is water. It's not soda. It's not coffee. It's not root beer. Okay, so it's not alcohol. It's not wine. So it is just straight plain water. So one really easy tip that I do every day: always make sure that I'm hydrating myself well. And then also one other thing that was interesting in that book with the 7 Blue Zones, the only food, other than they all have a plant-based whole food diet, the only food that was a commonality between all 7 of those groups that were studied was beans. So I thought that was really interesting. The magical fruit, who knew? And so all of them were eating some form of beans. So diets like the paleo diet that exclude things like beans or grains, it's kind of questionable, again, to Josh's point, is that smart to do that when most of the longest living populations in the world include these things? Number 2, this is something that I take really seriously. I follow my rhythm. And by that I mean, I read a book a while back called The Circadian Code by Dr. Panda. And in that book, I'll kind of summarize it for you, it's talking about your body has circadian rhythms or different timings that your different organ systems like to follow throughout the day. For instance, one of my big takeaways from the book was your digestion and your digestive tract. So Dr. Panda had mentioned that, having a break from eating for your digestive tract is incredibly important because it has many functions that it does when it's in its non-digestive state. So individuals that are putting food from the second they get up to the second that they go to bed into that digestive system are very adversely affecting their health, according to the book and according to a lot of the research that he quoted in the book. And one of his biggest tips was that your last meal of the day should be minimally 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep, so that your digestive tract has a chance to switch in to some of the functions that it needs to be doing while you're sleeping and resting. And to not follow that advice, so if you're having that midnight snack or, and I've been guilty of this in the past too, if you're having those couple glasses of wine after dinner that then lead into a little trip into the pantry for the chips or the pretzels, that is doing you a lot of harm. So anything you can do to stop those types of behaviors is significantly beneficial, in my opinion, and according to this book. So if you're interested in that, grab that copy and read a little bit more about it. Tip number 3 is sleep, or the quality and quantity of your sleep. And I read a book a little while back called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. He's considered one of the foremost experts in the world on sleep, does lots of studies on it, and he actually is someone who wrote a book that is funny and enjoyable about sleep, because I think sleep is pretty boring, right? I mean, that is a super boring topic. And in fact, in my earlier years, in my 20s and 30s, I would attempt to sleep as little as possible so I could be more productive. If I could get by on 6 hours, that's way better than doing eight hours of sleep, right? So you have more time to do the things that you want to do in your day. But unfortunately, sleep has a profound effect on almost every system in your body. And one of the quotes that I absolutely love from that book by Matt is, "Sleep is the tide that raises all the boats of good health." So if you are not sleeping well and the quality of your sleep is poor, you are sinking all of your boats of good health. You're sinking your ability to digest food, you're sinking your mood, your ability to exercise well. Even it has a profound effect on your body weight and your body composition, your sleep levels. So if there's one strong lever that you can pull that's going to help you with everything health related, getting a quality night's sleep would be a good one to start with. And a couple do's and don'ts. When you're sleeping, you want to sleep in a darkened environment, typically in a cooler space. Matt has an extensive list of that in his book. But then on the don't category, one of the biggest ones that he referenced was do not eat right before you go to sleep. And it just makes sense, right? Why would you throw a big load of food right into your gullet right before you lay down and go to sleep? That doesn't make any sense, but how many of us do that or have done that before? In fact, I was on a trip a couple weeks ago where all the individuals on the trip, was a trip where you went with other people, and so you kind of lose control of what you're able to do on those trips. They feed you when they're going to feed you and things, and I realized that I'm not a good person to go on those types of trips because I was horrified by the sleep schedule and also the eating schedule. Like, they were all eating, and these people were all mostly quite a bit older than me. I was one of the youngest people on the trip, but they were partying until these 7-year-olds. They're partying till like 10 at night, then they're gorging themselves, and then immediately falling asleep. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like it was awful. I won't be going any more trips like that in the future. So don't eat right before you go to sleep. The other thing that he referenced is do not drink alcohol before you go to sleep either, which many people do that to go to sleep, but it has a hugely detrimental effect on the quality of your sleep if you are drinking after dinner. And a lot of people do that. They have a glass of wine watching TV or whatever. So no judgment here, but that is going to affect the sleep negatively. One other thing, and this is one that maybe you guys haven't heard, I sauna almost every single day. And this came out of a book called Your Whole Heart Solution by another cardiologist, Dr. Joel Kahn. Great book. He has tons of actionable information and tips and different things that you might want to do if you have heart disease or are trying to ward that off. Dr. Kahn promotes a whole food-based vegan diet, just like Dr. Josh does. So, but one of the tips he had in there that was really interesting is saunas. And he brought up a couple different pieces of research. In America, the conventional wisdom, in fact, we even have it on the door to our steam room here, is that if you have heart disease or a heart problem, make sure to consult your doctor before you go in there and get all heated up, because you might cause a problem. But in many other countries, like Japan, they're doing both controlled research studies and observational studies where they're finding that there's been some really good benefit for individuals. And here's just one of them that Dr. Khan referenced. In a group of 300 patients, 150 or so of them got 2 different infrared sauna treatments a week and then would rest and rehydrate with water. And the other group of individuals that had pretty bad heart disease got just kind of standard care, did not get the sauna treatments. Over the course of 5 years, the rate of rehospitalization and death in the sauna group was 1/2 of the group that wasn't saunaing. So again, that seems like a pretty large decrease. Saunas are not expensive and they're not hard to implement at home. This is the one that I have in my house. It's a little teeny box that I bought on Amazon. The first one I got cost $199, but that one caught fire. So I don't use that one anymore. And then this one was a little bit more expensive. This one was $500. It's been holding up well so far. You're in there naked and your head's sticking out of the top and you have these little holes you can take your hands out of. You may have to have the ability to have some teasing from your family members, because all my children would come and go, "Oh my God, look at you look so weird." They teased me for about a year, and I don't care. I felt the benefit was so strong, I was going to still go in the sauna and do it, and it's something that I still enjoy doing to today. I haven't added that in, but yeah, heat and cold. I mean, that's something that has been used for ages, and maybe there's some wisdom to that. Maybe there's some things in that help us. Some of the studies out of Finland, where they're not doing infrared saunas, they're doing different types of heating methods. So it doesn't matter what type of heat you're using. It could be a whirlpool, it could be a hot bath. It just needs to be something that raises your core temperature. And this particular study also showed a dose-dependent relationship, is observational study, between cardiovascular events and death. If you saunaed more often, you had less. And it went up. You had less and less the more you did the saunas. So I saved the best for last, exercise. So this is within my medical realm as a physical therapist, so you can trust me a little bit more on this one. So with exercise, I always think of it like the magic potion. It truly is. Whenever I read anything where they're looking at what causes people to live longer or live healthier, and they look at diet or different things you can do, exercise always comes up as either the top thing you can do to live longer and live better and live a longer health span, or it's right in the top 2. Not smoking is typically the most important thing, but exercise is always way up there. And we're going to focus, there's 3 different categories of exercise, in my opinion. There's cardiovascular exercise, like walking or jogging on a treadmill. There is strength training, and then there's mobility work. They're all important, but we're going to focus in this little discussion tonight on cardiovascular training, because I think that's the one that most people hang their hat on when they get a diagnosis of heart disease. They want to get in shape, right? And it's one where you can make some mistakes as far as my thought process goes when you implement that. So I want to talk to you about some of the things to avoid. One book that I found extremely interesting in relation to cardiovascular fitness, and this is my final book recommendation of the evening, is The 1 Minute Workout by Martin Gibala. He is a PhD researcher. He is considered one of the foremost researchers in the world to measure how to get fitter and how to increase your VO2 max. So he's the real deal. And he did a ton of research on high intensity intervals versus more traditional steady state cardio. Because when most people think about getting better at cardio, they think about going for a walk or hiking or something like that for a duration of time, 20 minutes, an hour. If you're training for a marathon, it might be 3 or 4 hours a day. But he looked at what is the shortest duration that you can get benefit from doing these higher intensity intervals. So a high intensity interval would be a brief but very intense cardio stimulus. So for example, if you ran up and down your stairs for 30 seconds, that would be a high intensity interval. Or if you did jumping jacks as fast as you could for 20 seconds, that's a high intensity interval, okay? So that's the difference between those 2 strategies. But what he found, and he even kind of titled it in his book, he did a very well-designed study where he took individuals and he had them do 3 20-second high-intensity intervals with a teeny bit of rest between them. And they did that 3 times a week. So it's 1 minute, right? anyone can do 1 minute, right? Anybody has enough time to get that on their schedule. They got the same benefit as the other group as far as VO2 max increasing, meaning that their cardiovascular fitness levels went up, as the other group that was doing 30 minutes of jogging a day. So that's crazy. 3 minutes of exercise versus 150. So even from a time efficiency standpoint, high intensity intervals might be a good idea to add into your schedule. In addition to the fact that I personally believe there are a lot less wear and tear on the body versus some of the more traditional cardiovascular things like running, and actually may be better for your heart than the way some people train for some different types of cardiovascular training. One thing I want to be very clear on is cardiovascular training is a double-edged sword. It's super powerful and helpful for you, but as the benefit goes up, actually there is a clicker on here, Josh. You see that? I can so as if we think of this column on the left-hand side as the benefit from the cardiovascular exercise, and then this horizontal on this as the amount of time you're doing it for, there is a inverted U-shaped curve of benefit as far as cardiovascular work goes. And it starts getting benefit, 30 minutes, it's beneficial, 60 minutes, it's beneficial. It peaks at about 90 minutes at the top of the curve, and then it's all downhill from there, folks. So that 2 hours, 3 hours, anything beyond that, you're actually possibly even starting to cause a detrimental effect, especially to your cardiovascular system. And I'll tell you a story. I had a fellow gym owner, he doesn't live in this area. He's a little bit younger than me, but he got a heart scan score that was worse than mine, that's hard to do. So he knew I was into this stuff, so he's like, hey, what should I do to, not croak tomorrow? And so I kind of gave him my usual spiel. I had lunch with him. I gave him some tips, similar to what I'm talking to you guys about tonight. But I gave him the tip of, if you are going to be doing cardiovascular exercise, keep it under an hour and don't kill yourself. Just walking outside, you get a lot of the benefit from the exercise. And if you want some of the higher level benefits, include some of those high intensity intervals. He then went and completely did not take any of my advice. He started training for a marathon, which I think a lot of people do. I've heard that a lot when someone gets a diagnosis, and especially if they're in their 40s. I'm going to get in fantastic shape, and I'm going to train for this marathon, and I'm going to do this amazing thing. So he's training. And then he goes and does his marathon and proceeds to have a heart attack during the marathon. He survived. We are still friends to this day, and I have never told him I told you so. But when somebody does those extreme endurance sports, where sometimes like a marathon could take someone 6 hours to complete, and they measure some of the factors in their blood afterwards, they have some of the same cardiac damage factors in their blood that you would have when you have a heart attack. Because you're creating such a strong stressor to your heart. And then, can anyone identify this person from the picture? Fix, there you go, Jim Fix. So Jim Fix is the famous guy that got everybody into running. He has a fantastic pair of legs. Look at that guy's legs. Wouldn't anybody want legs like that? So Jim Fix advocated for marathon running, and he proudly proclaimed and crowed from the top of the roof that anybody who could do a marathon could never die of a heart attack. And then he promptly died of a heart attack while he was running one day. So think of exercise as that double-sided sword, and really take those guidelines into a thought process that most of the benefit from cardiovascular exercise comes from just low-level cardio. So don't feel bad about just taking a walk one day, or getting on the recumbent bike and reading while you're doing it. You don't have to be on this treadmill stressing and sweating and dying on the treadmill. If you want some of those benefits of that higher level cardio, add in some interval training to get those benefits. And in fact, most of the people that do marathon running do a lot more interval training now than they used to in the past. Most people aren't just doing these really long steady state workouts. So just a couple guidelines for you as far as the exercising goes. All right, I hope you feel like you know how to get a healthier heart, and please subscribe to our channel, like the video, and comment below if there's videos you'd like to see myself and Jeremiah do in the future. Thank you for watching.